Hi, I'm Steve Schulman, Aiken Gum's pro bono partner. 2020 was quite a year, with a global pandemic, a racial justice reckoning, and a landmark U.S. election. As the firm's pro bono partner, I was intimately involved in our response to each of those issues, working closely with our chair, Kim Coopersmith, and our chief diversity and inclusion officer, Neemish Patel. Late last year, Neemish and I recorded a video pulling back the curtain on how our firm responded to those issues, particularly racial justice, from an internal and external perspective. We also talked about how law students can join us in that work through our 1L Scholars programs. I hope you'll take a chance to review that video, reach out with any questions you have, and join us in this important work. Be well.
It took 8 minutes and 46 seconds for a white police officer to extinguish George Floyd's life on a hard Minneapolis street. On May 25th, the world was finally awakened in the most searing way to the racial justice that had too often stayed hidden below the surface. Of course, you know the story of how the country and the world reacted to George Floyd's murder. You saw the protests in the streets, the boycotts on the basketball courts and baseball fields, the tear gas and the counter protests. What you may not have seen was how the law firm community reacted to this moment. To us, a pro bono partner and a chief diversity and inclusion officer, this was a time for collaboration, to bring our experience to bear on the most important issue of our time. So what we want to do is give you a peek behind the curtain into how one law firm, in this case, Aiken Gump, responded and continues to respond to this crisis. Neemish?
So before we do that, one thing we thought it'd be helpful for you to know a little bit about who we are. So my name is Neemish Patel, and I'm the firm's Chief Diversity and Inclusion Officer. I've been here at the firm since January of 2019, and before that, I was heading up diversity and inclusion at another large firm. And before that, I was essentially the Chief Diversity and Inclusion Officer for the U.S. Department of Homeland Security under President Obama. Within the firm, my responsibilities here include leading all of the firm's efforts in the area of diversity and inclusion, and that absolutely includes one of the things that we're going to talk about today, which is our Strauss Diversity and Inclusion Scholars Program. Steve, you want to talk a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, I'm Steve Schulman. I'm the firm's pro bono partner. I started my career doing antitrust and white-collar criminal litigation. But when I was a fourth-year associate, I took my first asylum case, and I knew that was the kind of work I wanted to do. In 2006, I got the opportunity to come to Aiken Gump as our first full-time pro bono partner. I continue to work on human rights and refugee matters while I manage the global pro bono practice of our firm. I also manage our Pro Bono Scholars Program, which has been in existence since 2008, and gives first-year law students the opportunity to work both on pro bono matters and with legal aid organizations around the world.
So diversity and inclusion at Aiken Gump in 2020 is one of those examples where this is definitely not new to us, but it is absolutely different. In so many ways, this has been a very challenging year for all of us. But one of the things that is really important is to understand that we have a longstanding commitment to diversity and inclusion. And I think one of the most powerful examples of that is that we're one of the few large global firms to have a woman as chairperson, Kim Coopersmith. And she's absolutely extraordinary. She sets the tone from the top on everything, and in particular on issues related to diversity and inclusion. She's also the type of person, when she talks about these issues, you know that it's coming from an authentic and genuine place. Last year, we also issued an updated firm-wide diversity inclusion strategic plan that includes 4 different goal areas. The first is on leadership commitment and engagement. The second is on recruiting and the diversity pipeline. And then the third is on professional development and inclusion. And finally, on strategic partnerships. And that absolutely includes our clients, but a whole host of other organizations as well. There's so much to share with you in terms of what we've been doing in the space of diversity and inclusion, but in the interest of time, I'm just going to give you one example that's focusing on our leadership commitment area, because I actually think that's the single most important factor in terms of driving results and sustaining results. So earlier this year, Kim and I worked very closely together in restructuring our longstanding firm-wide diversity inclusion council. It now is led by Kim in partnership with me, and includes some of the most senior partners in the firm. And our point was to send a message both to the firm and beyond that this is a priority for the firm and that having this group together of senior leaders would help drive accountability for our actions in this area. But 2020 is also one of those years where you can have the best plans for what you want to accomplish, and then the storm hits. So first, it was the pandemic. And most importantly, we hope that you and your families are safe and well during this time. We can only empathize with what you're going through because law school, we both know from firsthand experience, is hard enough as it is. But then to do it in the middle of a pandemic with distance learning, so you definitely have our empathies and we hope that you're doing well. For us, what that meant is that we were in the office on Friday and then literally working from home on Monday. And thankfully for us, it was a fairly seamless transition. We have a longstanding agile workplace policy, which provided technology for everyone to be able to work from home as in the same way that if they were in the office. So the transition was relatively smooth. The biggest challenge was for anyone who had any kind of caregiving responsibility, and all of those support structures were no longer there. So that required a lot of immediate and strong messaging from Kim and other leaders to underscore the importance of flexibility and understanding during this time. Just as we were getting our hands around how to manage working from home and caregiving and all these other issues, we all saw the horrifying death of George Floyd, and that was right on the heels of Ahmaud Arbery and Breonna Taylor, and just too many others. It was clear that this was a moment that called for leadership. And thankfully, we have an extraordinary leader at the helm of this firm. Kim's had very public and powerful statements about the importance of our focus on racial justice and also our commitment to diversity and inclusion. And again, in the interest of time, I'm not going to go through the full list of everything that we did during this time. We had a number of different actions, but I'm just going to highlight a couple to give you an idea. So number one, we developed a brand new Racial Justice Resource Center, which had a nice compilation of books, articles, podcasts that anyone could read in terms of helping to understand these issues. We also brought in an extraordinary group of speakers to talk about these issues, including, for example, Professor Ibram X. Kendi, who wrote the book, How to Be an Anti-Racist. So those were some of the immediate actions that we took. But at the same time, we clearly heard the message that corporations and law firms were getting, which is that it's great to make these very strong statements about racial justice. But at the same time, it's important for you to turn that lens back onto yourselves. In our case, to turn it back onto ourselves about what we're doing in the space of diversity and inclusion. What are our efforts? And more importantly, what are our results? So we kicked into high gear all of the things that we were already doing and just kind of doubled down on all of our efforts. So one of the things that we did during this time was also taking a look at our firm-wide resource groups. And in particular, our Black firm-wide resource group was absolutely extraordinary during this time. It provided not only a critical source of community for our attorneys and our business services professionals, but it was also an important means of having a channel of communication with Kim, myself, and other firm leaders. So that's a little bit about how we responded to the moment in terms of racial justice and diversity and inclusion. Steve, you want to talk a little bit more about what we also did in the area of pro bono and how we've worked together on some of these issues?
Yeah, thanks, Namish. As you can imagine, there was an immediate outcry from every level of the firm about what can we do. We could take some immediate steps to help, for example, represent protesters who have been arrested during racial justice protests. We worked with Georgia Appleseed to update one of their key reports on effective and fair policing. And we ended up representing here in Washington, given our strong presence on Capitol Hill, 2 clergy members from St. John's Episcopal Church. That's the church you might be able to see in your mind's eye, the yellow church with the white pillars right across from Lafayette Square, where protesters were forcibly cleared by tear gas so that President Trump could walk across and hold up a Bible in front of the church. Those clergy members were there when this happened and were forced from their church. They were called by Congress to testify about what they had seen firsthand. Our congressional investigations team provided them with effective representation that allowed them to tell their stories in a clear and compelling way. But we also knew that this was not the same kind of crisis we had dealt with in the past. When, for example, family detention started in 2014, we sent lawyers immediately down to Texas to staff an immigration detention center. When the Muslim ban was implemented in January 2017, we sent dozens of lawyers to the airport. When families were separated at the border, we sent lawyers to El Paso and other border towns to reunite parents with their children. But this was not a circumstance where we could just take immediate action and address an acute legal need. Of course, racial justice and its roots run deep in this country. And so we needed a solution that would run deep and long. So I have this past year served as the co-president of the Association of Pro Bono Counsel. I made a phone call to all the former presidents of the association and asked them to get on the phone to brainstorm how we could, as a community, come together to address racial injustice. And from that call, many of us created the law firm Anti-Racism Alliance, which quickly grew into more than 280 law firms. I now serve on the board of the law firm Anti-Racism Alliance, and my colleagues at Aiken Gump have joined in on many levels, including Kim Coopersmith, who has joined the advisory board and has been one of the law firm leaders really pushing the alliance to provide immediate and long-term strategies. So I'm chairing our projects committee of the Law Firm Anti-Racism Alliance, which is developing matters in Louisiana and around the country to address racial injustice. I'm also working with the Systemic Racism Legal Inventory working groups that are investigating racial injustice in 16 different topic areas. So as I said, this is a moment where we had both an internal response on diversity and an external response on pro bono, and the firm has really risen to the challenge. Nimish?
Yeah, and that's really just a terrific example of how our two areas have worked together. One thing that I'd love to pivot to now is to tell you a little bit about the two programs that we referenced earlier, our Strauss Diversity Inclusion Scholars Program and our Pro Bono Scholars Program. So first, for SDIS, this is a program that we've had in place for a number of years, and then 2 years ago, we changed the format from focusing on our 2Ls, who were part of our normal 2L program, to now focusing on first-year students. And the change has been absolutely terrific. So now the way the program works is that in the summer of your first year, you spend the first 6 weeks with us, working on a range of different matters within the firm. And then the final 4 weeks of your summer, you actually go to one of our clients and spend 4 weeks working with our clients and really understanding what the practice of law is like from the perspective of an in-house counsel department. So it's an absolutely extraordinary experience for our students, and it's a great opportunity for us to partner with our clients. So it's been a really, really terrific program. And then what happens is in your second year, you come back and join the firm in our standard 2L program. And then after all of that is completed, we also offer a $25,000 scholarship to help offset the cost of law school. So Steve, you want to talk a little bit about the Pro Bono Scholars Program?
Sure. The Pro Bono Scholars Program was started in our Washington office in 2008 and quickly grew to include every one of our US offices with a summer associate program: Los Angeles, Dallas, Houston, New York, and of course still Washington. We hire 1L law students to come work with us for about 4 weeks on pro bono matters and learn about our pro bono practice, and then go on to work for 7 or 8 weeks with public interest organizations of their choosing. We've had more than 50 organizations host pro bono scholars, ranging from the KIPP Charter Schools General Counsel's Office to the Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights. Importantly, it is really up to the pro bono scholar to work with us to find the right match. We don't place people at an organization unless they've been introduced to the organization and it's something they're interested in. Some pro bono scholars come to us, in fact, with ideas of their own. One of our scholars worked at the New Orleans Public Defenders after she had found that organization. Another one identified an organization in South Africa, the Southern African Litigation Center, and worked for her summer in Johannesburg. We have had several racial justice organizations reach out to us this year. The Promise of Justice Initiative in New Orleans would like to host a pro bono scholar, and Mississippi Center for Justice would also like to host a pro bono scholar, in addition to many other organizations. When the pro bono scholars are done with that first summer, they go back to law school and then come back to us for the second summer. So they don't, thankfully, have to interview again. And they come back and become full parts of our summer class, and then eventually come back to join us as associates. Right now, we have more than 40 associates and counsel who came through the Pro Bono Scholars Program, and they continue to be involved in pro bono work. I want to emphasize, though, that all Akin Gump associates are involved in substantial pro bono work. And of course, as Nimish will tell you, many are also very much involved in the diversity program, not just our former Strauss scholars.
Absolutely. And one other quick point about both of these two programs. First of all, they're both extraordinary programs and amazing opportunities to get experience within the firm and just in these areas. And so one thing that both Steve and I would like to encourage you to consider is apply to both programs. It, number one, just increases your opportunity to land either one of these two opportunities. And again, both are really great ways of making a difference in the world of pro bono, racial justice, diversity, inclusion, all of those areas that we all care about so much. The other thing is we also this year have a brand new extension of our Strauss Diversity Inclusion Scholars Program, and that's focusing specifically in the practice area of financial restructuring. So if you have a specific interest in that or bankruptcy, or you just want to explore that a little bit more, and explore both of these two programs in general, visit our website. There's a lot more information there, including how to apply. And also, if you have any more questions, feel free to reach out to Steve or me directly. We'd love to hear from you. And most importantly, we hope that this time was helpful for you just to understand a little bit about how law firms have responded to this particular moment in terms of both diversity, inclusion, racial justice, and pro bono. So thanks so much for listening.
Thank you. We look forward to hearing from you. Take care.